Hello, Robin here, breaking down Survivor Season 41. This week's episode 4, You Hate Me Because You Ain't Me, or I believe probably more close to Shakespeare's sequel to A Comedy of Errors. Loved this episode, so much going on, so much going wrong, so much ridiculousness, classic Survivor, and going back to my favorite format, which is a 2-challenge episode, the reward and the immunity challenge. I enjoy 2 challenges, but the challenges don't seem to be as hard as I thought they were going to be. Like, I think they raved about brutal challenges, and I thought we were going to see the ridiculous, over-the-top strength challenges that you're going to see in Australian Survivor, but challenges seem pretty stock standard. I guess they're just more depleted without the food and the harsher conditions that they have to live through, whether they have flint or don't have flint. But our episode starts off with the returning to camp, and we have Genie doing what you probably shouldn't do. And it's hard. You've just had your number one ally, who you thought was your number one ally, vote you out. Not vote you out, get voted out. So you've been blindsided. Now you found yourself in a tribe of 4, being a minority of 1. So you think, but so you react emotionally, and it's hard not to. Like, it's the best way, and Jack and I used to say this all the time: come back to camp and congratulate the players. They did really well. Like, I know it's a game for $1 million. I know there's a lot at stake, but that emotional reaction doesn't get you to the end of the game. You might not go home next, and as we see, she doesn't go home next, but it doesn't get you. You're not winning. You can't win if you're going to react that abruptly and emotionally and feel so much hurt after a tribal council that you lose. There's a winner and there's a loser. And if your team loses, you got to deal with it better. And a lot of people struggle with that. We see Ginny struggling with that. And then we have Shan, I think they call her Shan. She says, well, actually, he was my number one, not your number one. I knew about these advantages, and you didn't. Which then kind of warning signs for JD. Now, JD's finally gets humbled, but I don't think he sees it at all. But JD goes, hang on a second, I was told I'm keeping information to myself, and I haven't told you. It's a lack of trust. Now you're doing the same thing. I don't know where JD's head is this episode. He makes no sense for a lot of it, but he hasn't for a while. So because of that, he wants his advantage back. Give me my advantage back now. If that's the case, it's mine. I want it back. So Shan gives the advantage back. And that's kind of our little start off. And then we go into our tribe. Then we go into our reward challenge, where we have the beginnings of Luvu's ridiculous episode, with Heather struggling really hard and not being able to complete the ball section. Chuck the ball up on the rail, run through the ropes, and she just can't do it, which, you know, is a bit of a wake-up call for the tribe. We aren't invincible. We can lose. Side note, I also love our athlete, our professional athlete, not Danny, but JD, our professional athlete, who stumbles and falls flat on his face in this episode, in this challenge. Another great performance from the athlete. So got a lot of, find JD rather amusing. But we do have the real athlete, Danny, come over to Heather at the end of that reward, where they get smashed, absolute pantsed, and just try and bring her back up. And it was a nice little moment, and, you know, Jeff calls it out. You know, these are some of the moments where you do actually really enjoy the game a bit more. Like, outside of the game, you enjoy humans pushing. She didn't succeed, but she never gave up. It's that moment when Sari couldn't swim, didn't want to swim, but she gets out and swims again. Those sort of inspirational moments that Survivor can bring up is really, really nice. Step away from the strategy and the gameplay. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about strategy and gameplay, and we'll move off from Heather really quickly. Then we get back to camp, and obviously Yasa win their fish, and Ua win their superhero Fijian who just teaches them how easy it is to survive off the land there because he's been doing it his entire life. But Luvu, we have Erika, who again hasn't really said much, and we haven't seen much of Luvu at all because they haven't needed to be seen. We've seen Naseer, who I was really worried about last week, with the red herring that the editors put out for us. Naseer went out and talked to Sydney about getting to Shan, and then I thought maybe they're going to want to get rid of Naseer this time. And I like Naseer for what little I've seen of him, and I like him even more from this episode. But it's Erika. Erika goes up to Deshawn, and pretty much we see the exact same thing that Naseer did, that Erika does. I watch Sydney. She's too emotional. Yeah, that's true. She's too emotional. She isn't someone you need to work with. We should be voting her out. This is another misread. You haven't said anything. From what we're hearing from Deshawn's point of view. Deshawn says she's just been this quiet little person who's just been sitting back in camp. Great, take in all the information. You don't have to, as long as you're not upsetting anyone, especially in these. I mean, the tribe has not gone to tribal yet, so they don't have torches. They haven't been, so you don't really know where everyone's loyalties lie just yet. And when you have an Erika who hasn't actually said much, who has been laying low from what we're being told, who's been laying low, who's been chilling back, it's hard to get to know you because you haven't been saying anything. And then the first thing you say is we need to vote out this person who, in this case, is Sydney, who might be emotional, might have a bit of a temper, but has built up relationships, has built a friendship with these people already, has built the bonds and trusts that form what little threads you can tie together of an alliance, especially in the that's what you're looking for. It's someone you can rely on. And that is why this game has been going for 21 years, I think, is it's that fine balance of your friend and the person you need to betray or your person you need to trust, but there's that $1 million at stake. You're going to trust someone who you've been hanging out with and been enjoying the time with more than someone who actually hasn't spoken a word. So for Erika to just come out of her little hidey hole and start to instantaneously demand, probably isn't the right word, but push and force a strategy on someone about someone else without going, hang on a second, what's their relationship? This has been a big blunder we've seen multiple times on this episode. What's the relationship with the other person? We get so caught up in the blindsides, the big plays, the strategies, they'll never see it coming, that what we are now currently missing from these people who are pushing these strategies is, well, who am I talking to? What is their relationship with that person? Is this a good thing to say? Double check. Every time you do want to go up and have that sort of strategic talk, you need to remind yourself, what am I trying to achieve here, and what can go wrong? What can go wrong is I can expose myself to someone who's actually really tight with that person or aligned. In Uwa's case, if you were to go Ricard, Shan's not going to like that. Shan, because that they're 1 and 2, they're pretty tight. So mentioning this to Deshawn, again, another misread of where the tribe sits. And this is unfortunately something that over the years has started to be forgotten more, because gameplay takes such, the strategic element to Survivor seems to be the main focus. And nowadays, in this 26th day, we've lost 13 days of our game. It's been forgotten more often. The social pillar of Survivor, in my opinion, is possibly the strongest pillar. Yes, a great strategic game and a great strategic mastermind is amazing to watch, but will ultimately fail. An amazing challenge beast, which those who watch this regularly know I love a challenge beast, and I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing Danny be one of those. Love a challenge beast, but without that social that social game holding you closer to people who might want to get you out and still will probably want to get you out, but it just buys you more time. The social element is key. And we are often forgetting, I mean, we saw Naseer do it, and there might be a bit of a difference with Naseer because the cultural difference coming from his Indian heritage might mean he wasn't intending it to be so blunt when he was talking to Sydney. So there could be a mix of that there. But we've seen it with Brad, we've seen it with Naseer, we now see it with Erika, where they just tell their plan or just go all in on wanting to get someone out without actually reading what the dynamics are. And when you have a tribe of this current point in time, 6, whereas other tribes now have 4 and now 3, it's harder to get away with these social errors. They're really, really hard to get away with because there's no talk about. I mean, we saw the next part is Deshawn talking to Danny regarding we need to throw the challenge to get rid of Erika because come merge, we'll have 6, and if they've got 4 and 3, so they've got 7. They're gonna the Ua and the Yasa tribes make sense for them to form an alliance to take out the tight 6, the unbeaten 6 of Luvu. So they're not talking about a switch up. They're not talking about a change, going to 2 tribes before a single tribe. Shan is worried about a merge. And that might possibly be what happens. We might not get a tribe mix. It might be 3 tribes into the single tribe and that's it. And so that's what he's playing for. And it makes sense. There's 6 of them. If they merge next week at 7, at 13, you do have that. You got to think of the numbers. It doesn't make sense. Like, they haven't gone to tribal. They haven't got a torch. Great, that's exciting. But the other two have. The other 2 have experienced tribal. That gives them a common thing to join up and go against the Luvu tribe. So a nice way to think. And he wants to throw the challenge, which is another part of the comedy of errors that is Luvu this episode. Do I agree with throwing a challenge? I don't often agree with that. I find that hard, especially in this case. There's not enough people to throw the challenge successfully, as we see. And especially when you back up who was out on the reward challenge, and so they have to play. So a Naseer and an Erika were out, so they have to play. To throw a challenge seems a bit silly. I get the strategy behind it. I get getting someone out, but you know what? More often than not, it's not worth it. It's not like, it's good to go to tribal. It's good to experience tribal. It's good to work out tribal jitters and getting your talk under control and controlling things, but usually that should have happened prior. Curveballs can come up in tribal, but throwing the challenge doesn't seem like the smartest move here, when just on the off chance that you are thinking they will come for us, the 7 will come for the 6. The thought process makes sense, but remember, it's an individual game. Why don't you be the first person to break away from the 6? Why don't you be the first person to start playing? You know, the game will really ramp up come merge, because you are getting close to the end and people want that resume. People want those blindsides. People want those big moves. Trying to get Erika out by throwing the vote or throwing the challenge, it doesn't give you enough. It doesn't give you enough reward in the end, because we've seen it before. You have a plan for how this is going to go, and next week you're expecting merge to come. It's a new game. We don't know what's coming. We don't even know if they'll merge. We might have jury members coming when the tribes are still 3, which would be weird because they haven't seen the other players. They'll only be able to witness from jury, from watching on the jury, and from other people getting voted out, going back to Ponderosa. But we don't know. And so if you're planning for the unknown, what happens if you do get rid of Erika, who currently has confided in you with some bit of information. So she currently trusts you. Yeah, sure. She might be shady, she might be a bit of a snake, sure, but she currently trusts you, and you're willing to forego that trust on the off chance to get the head off the snake early. I mean, the snake hasn't formed yet. It's probably still shedding its skin. It's not ready to go. So yes, get it before that happens. I understand that. But now you get rid of an Erika, you throw the vote, you get rid of an Erika, and then you expect the merge to come soon. A merge doesn't come. Jeff says, drop your buffs, we're switching tribes. We're going into 2 tribes. Draw rocks. And you, Deshawn, are the only person who draw the 1 color rock to go on the other side. You lose Danny, you lose Sydney, and you lose Naseer. Like, again, Heather doesn't seem to be in play here when it comes to this strategic talk. Your main allies are Danny and Sydney. And I feel like you could potentially, even though Naseer's thrown your name on the bus, you could potentially rely on Naseer if you needed to, come mixing and merging. And you get thrown out there on your own with maybe just Heather. It's you and Heather on your own. You've just gotten rid of Sydney, you just threw that tribal, and now it's a 2-tribe thing. The merge hasn't come yet. That's still two tribals away or whatnot. And you're on a bottom alliance of 2-4, where if it was Erika there, it would have been 3-3. So this risk to get rid of someone by forcing it, the force is just, I just usually think it always ends bad. I mean, they do it all the time, not all the time, but they do the throwing a challenge, but more often than not, at some point, it's going to bite you in the bum. And anyway, we get the beautiful, like, I'm enjoying how the editors are playing around with this season. They're having a bit more fun with things, but the cutaways to Danny and Deshawn as they explain what's going on in the challenge, and that slow motion shot of Naseer, loved it. And then you have Evie swimming the complete wrong direction. Like, when is that happening? You're trying to throw a challenge, and one of the other team players from another tribe just decides to swim the other way. Like, what is going on? Very, very funny. And then you also have our great athlete JD, who was trying to toss the rings, almost running off the platform and placing the ring on the hook. It seemed. I don't know where he thinks he's an athlete from. He's delusional, and we're seeing that more and more. And he gets called out, but we're seeing, we'll go back to Deshawn, slowing things down finally at the ring toss, and then he loses the ring, and Naseer jumps in and goes, bang, here we go. I would have laughed so much if he just got 3 in a row without worrying. That would have been the funniest. But anyway, they do not lose the tribe. They do not go to tribal council. And in the end, UA are back-to-back tribals. And then we have that Shan's beautiful little talk about JD calling out money when he should have been calling out tribal. Great little confessional. And then we get into the nice bit of strategy here by Shan, completely blowing JD out of the water. JD came to change the game and didn't want to be one of the dummies. He has been a dummy from day one. He's been a dummy from day one, and this is probably the fear I have of if I was to ever go on the show. I'd be like a JD. He was useless. So he has the advantage. He gives the advantage away once, and then he says, now I got it back. Can't do it again. Fool me once, earlier on that episode, fool me once, shame on you. You won't be fooling me twice. And sure enough, he goes home. But it's an interesting dynamic here where you have a 4. We have the roll of the die to save yourself. What is it? I can't remember what it's called now. Chance of fate. I can't remember. But you can go and roll your die and see if you'll survive. Sacrifice your vote. And right now, Genie is really worried about it, and she's contemplating it. And JD needs her to not think like that. JD doesn't need to worry here, but Genie does. Genie needs to worry. She thinks she's the bottom, and her one thing is, I'm going to roll my dice. That's a final move. That's a Hail Mary. You've got, I don't know, 6 hours to work something out here. And she throws Ricard under the bus. Obviously, it all works out for her in the end, but not because of her. Nothing because of her. This is, again, you got to read that tribal line. Why is she wanting to go after Ricard? She's gone after Ricard before. Ricard doesn't like that she's gone after her. Try and mend that bridge. Right now, you should be able to read Ricard and Shan are 1 and 2. They're tight. Your other on the external is JD. So you have two options. Whether you know JD has that advantage or not, you probably don't. Try and see if you can work with JD. Try and see if you can work with JD and Shan to get rid of Ricard if that's what you're aiming for. But the easiest option is to split. Okay, if it's either going to be me or JD, how do I make it JD? What's my pitch to make it JD? Not what's my pitch to make it Ricard, whose name isn't on the table right now. In a team, in a tribe of 4. Surely in a tribe of 7, you have the ability to throw someone else under the bus and take the distraction. And we've seen Sandra do that very well when she was playing Game Changers. She obviously didn't win that season, but they were coming after her. She's like, no one's coming after me. I'm going to make the focus on these two. If you can distract, sure. In a tribe of 4, there's nowhere to distract. You can't take out Ricard. That's a silly move. You can try and pitch your case for JD because JD's equally on the bottom. Unfortunately, she doesn't. Lucky for her, she doesn't go home, and lucky for her, Shan is on the money with another great little bit of play. But again, she now has nothing. She doesn't have anything. She can't back that up. Whereas this move is a Shan move. Tells Ricard, keeps Ricard in the loop about all the information about what if we get this a reward off him, and I'm going to play because that's the kicker. If Genie did convince JD has that extra vote, it becomes 3-2. And that's what you got to get rid of. That advantage can be pretty damaging when you're at these low levels. When you are with potential 2-2 split, which would have probably been a nice little move. Now we want to take that power out, leave it back at camp. And she goes, I'll play Paranoid. JD falls for this. JD's like, well, she's such a good player. She's a great player. But she gets so paranoid. Well, why is she getting paranoid? Because she's a great player. She's playing you like a fool. Because there's no reason for Shan to get paranoid. Apart from potentially this advantage coming into play. So anyway, JD falls for it. And she convinces him to leave. And you know what I like about it? She's like, can you leave the vote at home? Leave it at tribal. Leave it at our camp. Not give it to me. Her first move is please leave it here so I can gain some trust. And he's like, why would I leave it here? Like, you should always take your advantages. Well, what if I take it? What if I've got it? And if you need it, we can use it. But I just want to be in possession of it. This is a really beautiful little bit of inception here, because she doesn't force. She did it before. Give it to me last tribe, and he was much safer back then. Now he isn't very safe, and she, instead of saying can I have it, she says leave it here because that means I don't have it. You get it when you come back here. You're coming back here. You're just not going to have it there, and it's going to eliminate my fear of that being played in a 3-2 vote against us on me. And he bites, and in the end, she ends up with the advantage. And when you do that, you do exactly what Sarah did. If I've got the advantage, I'm getting rid of you. I was surprised she didn't get rid of him last time when she took the advantage. Then she had to give it back. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. This is the exact opposite. Shame on me for giving it back to you that first time. Gosh, I'm not letting that happen again. I'm going to take it. I'm going to take it for good. So she walks out of this pre-merge. JD can't even say this. Great move under her belt. Strong move under her belt. Great blindside. She has solidified her 2 with Ricard. Great. Good to have. You always would love to, if you, in all possible scenarios, love to have one person to rely on. She gets that. And Genie is still on the bottom. She walks out of there solidifying her number 2, with an advantage that she didn't have to do anything for. She just got given it. She didn't have to do anything sneaky, or it's just hers now. And she's still in the majority and keeping the minority on her terms. Then JD goes home, blindsided, shocked. Why'd you do that? Well, why'd we do it? No, look, it's obvious why we did it. Have you not see what's been happening? He has no idea what's going on in this game. Anyway, he's gone home, and we see what goes on towards next week. And in the preview, Genie finds the advantage from Brad. She finds that being put out in place. Now, I don't know what we're going to see. I don't know if we're going to see a mix-up or a merge. We're going to have to be getting awfully close because we are down to 13 players. Potentially 3 more tribals, maybe, and a merge at 10. So we might not be seeing a swap, or we might be seeing a swap for 2 tribals. So either we see a swap next week, or we see a swap the week after before we go into a merge, or we're going to be merging pretty soon. So that whole, unfortunately, that whole try immunity idol thing hasn't worked out. Xander hasn't had a vote since he found it on day 4, or even though he hasn't been to tribal twice now, but he hasn't had a vote, lost his vote, can't have an immunity idol. Brad found it. You're still waiting on one more person to find it. It hasn't been found on the Luvu tribe. Now, if that tribe if there's a merge, you kind of have to force. You have to force the merge to go the merge to go to that beach, because that's the only place the idol will be left for it to become activated. I loved the concept of this idol. I loved what they were trying to do, but so far it hasn't worked. So far it's kind of been a hindrance and kind of ruined a little bit of gameplay and potentially killed some games. If Yasser go back to tribal, I mean, we do see Tiff going through Xander's bag. Don't know why. I don't know why Tiff's going through Xander's bag. She already knows the advantage. Like, that's been said. Evie has told her, but Tiff's doing Tiff. But he doesn't have a vote. It's 3 versus 1, and 1 doesn't have a vote. So, unfortunately, it should have just been lose a vote for 1 tribal, maybe. This forever tribal, you can't. I'd be wanting to get out, and I know the rules are you can't go to someone else's tribal, or can't go to someone else's beach, but I'd be wanting to go to their beach and try and find the idol myself. Like, killing me. Ugh. Anyway, we're not too far from a shake-up. Just because Genie finds that idol doesn't really mean anything unless the other idol is found. And actually, if they were to go to tribal again, Genie finds that, takes it, she has no vote. The other 2 have a vote. She just goes home. So her finding the idol, unless 2 tribes, in both tribes, are going to find that last idol, we have something interesting. But right now, unfortunately, that idol advantage disadvantage thing isn't playing out as excitingly as you'd want it to. Yeah, you get a bit of the funny stuff with you have to say that code word at the challenge, but it's not really working. So what happens next week? You know, does Xander go home? Does do Luvu finally get their chance to get rid of Erika, or does Sydney go home? I mean, Sydney's having a bit more screen time than Erika marginally, because she's got some funny things, but she's not savvy as hell. From what we're seeing anyway. So yeah, maybe it's a bit of a red herring of seeing Genie find this, go through Xander's bag, and Luvu go to tribal and get rid of Erika, but who knows. Anyway, great episode, loved it, hope you loved it too. Anyway, that's it for me. I will see you guys next week.